Ready, camera, mark.
I love Wolfgang's movies, and I've never done a movie like this.
This is so humongous.
You can't help but get wrapped up in the enormity of these sets.
We work with 7 cameras at the same time.
I call it the Gone with the Wind, bygone era of Hollywood filmmaking.
When the original movie came out in '72, I mean, it was really the first killer disaster movie.
They were all a bit unrealistic, a bit campy, but they were excitement. Now it's all up to us to come up with something completely new and different.
You can't think of this as a remake. It's got much more passion of this filmmaker underneath it, that's for sure.
I'm always excited to work with Wolfgang because he's a great director to work with. And you're always interested why he takes on whatever project he takes on, and he just felt sort of filled out a trilogy for him of water pictures.
The first being Das Boot, the second being A Perfect Storm, and the third being Poseidon.
The difference here was rather than Navy men who are trained to be in that environment, or fishermen who are also ready for something like that. This was just people like you and me in that situation, and that's quite a different response.
This is a journey into madness. It's really so scary that I would say it's like marching right into hell.
Paul Gallico, who wrote Poseidon Adventure. How I believe he came up with the idea is that in 1937, Paul was on the Queen Mary. They were in a huge storm in the Atlantic. A rogue wave had, in fact, hit the boat, but it wasn't a rogue wave as big, big enough as in the movie to, flip the thing over. But it was enough to make pretty much the entire ship and crew very, very sick.
Rogue waves, or they're also referred to as extreme waves or freak waves, are extraordinarily sized waves that stand out among the other waves, and usually in the open ocean. It's estimated by the British and Norwegian shipping industry that approximately 1 ship per year is lost in the North Atlantic due to a rogue wave.
When you start doing research about rogue waves, you become fascinated and you become terrified. It's an entirely valid concept that it could do this.
Let's go right away, please.
And do a good one, the writer is here.
I did read the book. I did watch the original film.
We wanted to make it brand new.
It was not easy to get a story that is not a remake of the old Poseidon Adventure, because we didn't want that. Why shall we do another Shelley Winters character? No, she was great. We said, no, we only use the basic idea of a gigantic, big, luxurious ship being caught by an enormous wave and capsizes.
When we got to a point where there was a very strong outline, they were storyboarding sequences. They were doing designs for the ship.
One of the bigger challenges was that our script wasn't complete and we needed to move forward, because that meant you had to make calculated decisions on what to build, what not to build, and you were going to have to live with those. And there was a lot of different incarnations of the script as we went. And then we also went through and we start to look at, the puzzle right from the beginning. How are you going to do it? Where are you going to do it? How much cooperation are you going to get from outside? Can you use a real ship?
2 reasons for not shooting on a real cruise ship. For one, we're only upright for about 10 minutes. And then it's upside down, and I somehow don't think cruise lines would appreciate that.
We had originally thought we might shoot it down in Mexico in the tank that was down there, because certain parts of it would have been a good fit down there, but that tank wasn't available, so we came right back to Warner's.
The interesting thing for me on this film is we will shoot 1 exterior day on this entire film, which we shot in pre-production.
In 3, 2, 1, action!
We're here at the Sepulveda Dam today. Today we're shooting a live action element, our hero actor, running on the deck of a ship. And we don't have a real ship for him to run on, so we need to photograph him running on what amounts to a facsimile of the ship's deck.
The opening shot is a 2.5 minutes shot that is the most complicated, challenging, costly, longest, without any cut, 2.5 minutes shot in the history of motion pictures. Ilem has never done anything like it, and that means nobody has done anything like it.
put a human on a CG vessel at sea is about as sophisticated as it comes.
Amazing.
It's just fantastic.
That was interesting, and I have to say I had never done a shot quite like that, but it went off like clockwork, and it was a great combination of using sort of old Hollywood technique and very, very modern technique, because in the shot you have the cable cam and it's driven by all these computers, but the green screens that we had were all pushed by grips, so you'd have like 6 guys pushing a big wall around right behind the camera right before it turned around. So it was a combination of like this old style manpower and brand new, technology.
The ship has just turned around and you just landed in that position you are.
Wolfgang came up with the idea that if he could, he'd like to shoot as much of this movie in continuity.
We wanted to be able to work through in continuity because it gave us the ability to actually see the progression of how things were falling apart, how people got hurt, how their wardrobe was falling apart.
In normal circumstances, when a director comes to me and says he wants to shoot a movie in continuity, I look at him, I smile, I go back to my office, I close the door, and I'll throw something. But in this case, though, it was interesting.
We figured out a way to do it.
We were able to get ahead of ourselves in terms of building, and we could build out this show and get it built in such a way that Wolfgang could shoot in a continuity order. The next set was always ready. Now, because we only had 5 stages, we knew that once we were done shooting one set, we had to get that set the heck off that stage and build another set in its place. So there was a lot of juggling on weekends and nights of striking sets, building sets, redressing sets, so that they'd be ready on the day, continuity-wise, that we needed to be in there.
The idea was, from the very beginning, to build real sets. I think for everybody, especially for the actors, it is just really a difference if they stand in front of just blue walls with a door here and a door there and the rest is all imagination, or if they really are in a gigantic ballroom and having fun. That told us we have to go for the real deal. We build the ballroom, we build the lobby, build all these big sets, and create a very realistic environment.
The most surreal moment of the movie is when the whole group, we walk out onto this balcony overlooking the entire upside-down lobby, and there's steam, and there's sparks, and there's water.
Wow.
Wolfgang decided to play Zarathustra from Strauss, the 2001 music.
And we all sat there, and it was very hard for us not to lose our mind with both an incredible excitement and an awe about the scope and tragic madness of it all.
Well, New Year's is never what you expect, is it?
But because we just shot this movie in continuity, and the first chunk of the movie is just playful, wild party. And I remember coming to work one day and turning to Wolfgang and saying, I'm just having the time of my life. Happiest time of my life. And I knew in the back of my mind, it's gonna change. It's gonna get hard.
I tell them it's tough. I tell them really we go for it. We go for the reality of it.
Come on, Mom. It's easy.
Whatever you can do, I would like you to do it. And it's always the same reaction. We wanted to do it ourselves.
I do most of the stunts, so whatever stunts I can't do, I'm pretty bummed out. Here we go!
We really did all of our own stunts, and you can really see us in those moments, in those situations.
We're doing some really great physical action with the actors. They're jumping and running. They're crawling through small spaces. They're swimming.
My character basically is soaking wet for the entire time.
We were 20 feet above the ground, and I said to myself, what are you doing here? It's like as if it was the real thing, so it's tough.
So you'll swim up to that, push the chair out of the way, open it, the dummy kind of hanging right over there. Anytime you can have an actor perform and get that action and that reaction from an actor right in the middle of it all, I mean, that's, to me, that's exciting.
They were a real game group of people. We did do a lot of practice work with people who felt they wanted to work with scuba ahead of time. We had classes in that.
Davey passes.
He passes. Put a little happy face.
Nice.
It's hard.
It is hard to swim in clothes. That's why it's good not to be That's why it's good not to be on a ship that sinks, huh?
What I learned on this, which I didn't have any idea about, was it'll say like one line of a description of what becomes a stunt. It could take a week to shoot.
There's a scene with Jacinda where she's caught by an enormous wall of water. And it's Jacinda. And she's flying through the corridor on the top of that wave. And she did it. She did it twice.
In that grand lobby is a pool of fire. And sort of madly, I said, you know, I want to swim under the pool of fire. You know, I want to do that. I really would love to be able to figure out a way to shoot so that you're not using a stunt person. And stupidly, I would go home after work, after being in water all day long, and swim back and forth underneath the water of my pool and, you know, literally hold my breath for as long as I possibly could. And sort of hoping that eventually I could convince them to let me swim under this fire. And I tell you what, it was hot. It was hot, it was terrifying, and I hallucinated for about 3 hours afterwards. I was actually having fun today until I got panicked.
Totally changed the mood.
Totally did. I went from being in a great mood to absolutely terrified.
We worked hard to really forget everything what is sort of actorish, forget about makeup, forget about all the vanity you normally have. I mean, it was underwater, above water. They do it, and they are very afraid doing it, and you see it. That makes it so exciting, I think.
Okay, here we go, please. And
Take camera mark. Camera mark. Take camera mark.
I've never worked on a movie before that was shot the way Wolfgang shot this one with John Seal, and 5 cameras was the standard fare.
John Seal is a great cinematographer. I just love to work with him. I did Perfect Storm with him, and thank God I did this one with him because he's a perfectionist now with these sort of 3, 4, 5 camera systems.
As you know, we have 5 or 6 cameras now going with long lenses, meaning we got much closer into faces, into the action, everything.
The approach to shooting this film was that knowing that the actors were going to be put through an extremely physical challenge every day, I thought that what would help them a lot was to be able to cover as much as I could each take, because, you know, over 5 months or so of shooting, it would drain them.
Assholes, both of you.
We started off fairly conservatively with sort of 2 cameras a lot, but we quickly worked up to 3 and eventually moved up to 4 and 5 and occasionally 6 cameras. And we got rather bold in the end because we were actually setting up almost entire scenes with, you know, 4 or 5 cameras that we would shoot in one hit.
It's kind of great because you don't have to go back and try to recapture a feeling in different angles.
For a film like this, where so many things can happen, and actors have that one great moment here that will never come back because it so much has to be improvised and is physical and reacts just because it happens here. The actor did that, and we have it.
If you really boil it down, though, the camera operators on this film were actually documentary cameramen, chasing the action as it happened.
What we get with that is we get a very real feeling situation. Also, actors, they sometimes even don't know that the camera's watching from here and from there and from there.
There are cameras everywhere, and it almost became like a Where's Waldo game for all of the actors, because when the set is so vast and they're getting close-ups from so far away, it's like, where are the cameras? I see 3. Does anybody see them? Oh, there's one over there.
I'm gonna be bummed out, you know, in the next movie, it's like 1 camera and you're like, where are my other 4 cameras?
The other thing that is most remarkable was Wolfgang's comfort in the face of tremendous chaos.
When it comes to a movie like this, like, you don't really get anybody more experienced or better than Wolfgang. He knows how to deal with extras and all of the stunt guys.
I think at various times we probably had 1,200 people in and around the set, including at times we had up to 400 extras. When you have that many extras, you have this whole city of tents out in base camp and hair and makeup. Because people are injured and killed in the movie, they have to go through an extensive makeup and hair process.
Some of the specific things that we're doing with these people is we're imagining the ship turning, chairs hitting them, coffee cups hitting them, glass, people rolling through the chandeliers.
They airbrushed wonderful wounds on people, and they put fake bones and putting holes in their heads, and there were people walking around on the set with bones sticking out of their pants, and then go into commissary and get some food. Anyway, it was great fun.
The extras also have to be fit for multiple costumes.
The costumes was something that was thought through, sketch design, because all of those costumes all had to be made in such a way that they were aged, they were destroyed.
We had a team of 10 agers that worked 12 hours a day, aging all these multiples to make 3 of a kind with the same cut, the same tear, the same burn.
Well, first I went over it with some paints and got it to look dusty and a little burn. Then went over it with razor blades and put the cuts in it.
The principal costumes was a different matter. We had 75 shirts for Josh Lucas.
So this is just supposed to be like a lot of sweat and grime that's going on.
You're having to say, okay, we are now an hour and 45 minutes into this boat sinking. What room have they just gone through? What grease do they have? What fire has burned the shirt?
Being able to pretty much go in sequential order has allowed the wardrobe department to be, I think, much more accurate.
Gosh, look at my wardrobe. Aren't I just a mess right now? This is just insane.
30 dresses for Jacinda, 40 tops for Emmy.
To think that they had special clothing for us made so we could swim in them, and had fake shoes made, and they have these little vents in the bottom of Mike's shoes to let the water out. It's really just, it's so unimaginable.
Hard to starboard engine, full of start!
What was really amazing about the wave is it's a huge wave, and it's got to hit and it's got to fill every void and every cavity on the surface of the ship, and there are many. And water is one of the most difficult things to do in visual effects. You're dealing with very complex simulations that, I mean, the US government, with all their supercomputers, still has a hard time dealing with water. And we employed the services of Stanford University, their computer graphics department, to help us deal with it. There is a process that we go through to create this wave, and it's sort of the beginning of it is just listening to what Wolfgang, our director, had in mind, what he was trying to achieve with it. And in this particular case, the fundamental directives for me were to outstorm the perfect storm, which of course he directed, and then to kind of out-Titanic the Titanic. And we needed to take this movie to another level.
They want absolute realism, and at the same time, they want to be able to take it to 11 and make it look really, really so over the top that people are, absolutely entranced by the way that this wave develops. So we've got a whole bunch of software developers, a whole bunch of technical artists, and fine artists as well, working on creating every little component of that.
The water starts off kind of looking like a big vat of jelly, and it gets more and more detailed and more refined until ultimately there are something like 12 or 14 layers of water, foam, mist, spray.
It's going to give us a dynamic to the shots that you've never ever seen before.
The amazing thing about this movie is that we have dealt with more water than anybody has ever dealt before on a stage.
Well, the water is almost a character in this film. I mean, it's chasing them throughout the ship. It starts flooding the ballroom.
What we're going to do is send 90,000 gallons of water into our ballroom, our inverted ballroom.
The first challenge was, how are we going to do that? It's full of 150 to 200 people, and the water has to rush in and take them all out. So we did dump tank tests. We actually put 9,000 gallons of water coming out of a cylinder and slamming into you.
Behind the set, we had 100,000 gallons of water. What we'll do to hold the water back is we use tempered glass. This is the scary part. Throughout the shoot, when we had the actors and everybody in the ballroom, we used 3/4 inch tempered glass, and it's just practically indestructible. But when we did the dump, we wanted the glass to bend. So we went all the way down to 1/4-inch thick tempered glass.
We have designed this in such a way that the windows will not all come at once.
Each window had to blow at a certain point, so we choreographed which window was going to go first per our camera positions. After we blow all the windows, our 90,000 gallons of water, out in this environment, we will have stunt people on ratchets. And then we combine those two pieces together for the master shot.
So we have 10 cameras, right?
10, yeah.
Then we have another little camera in here. It's a 2x6 wall. It should hold up.
You're kind of on edge. In that time between you've loaded the tanks and you're waiting for the director to say action, you're really just a nervous wreck because you feel like if you walked in front of those windows, that they were just going to burst at any time.
All right, I'm ready.
Good job, John.
That was quite something, and we were not really sure what it would do because it is a lot of water. So we're all on the other side upstairs looking down and sort of holding on and seeing where the next pillar is that you can hold on just in case it smashes our little platform.
You know, it was so surreal for me that I have to see the playback. It was like so much to take in.
That was exciting. I wish we would have sold tickets to that.
I feel that this could be a benchmark of Hollywood filmmaking.
Wolfgang is always trying to push the envelope.
Those are the things that Wolfgang strives for that I think are really fun to be a part of.
What I love about this movie is it totally delivers on its promise. You know, it's 1,000 thrills and it's exciting and heart-pounding and it's just a great night at the movies.